Alright, what is up guys, it is Storm back here with another video, and in this one I am bringing you part 34 to Mightless, a My Hero Academia story by the mysterious banana. Now, it's kind of been a little bit since I've done this series, and I'm gonna try and work on how often I upload this series, so I guess be on the lookout for more Mightless, and I'm going to try to at least do one part at the latest every couple of weeks, but I'm gonna try and get one at least once a week. But with all that out of the way, if you like the content you're seeing, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. I mean, they're all free, so why not? If you want some dope channel merch links, that will be down in the description below. And if you want to see more of me, be sure to go check out my other channels and go follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, which will all be linked down below. But without further ado, why don't we just dive right on in. The bullet train stopped at Yokohama City around 10 p.m. While late at night, the streets of the Kamino ward were still bustling with people, as do many shopping districts do around Japan. The four undercover students got off the train, getting a good look at their destination. "This place is huge. Are you sure these jerks are hiding here?" asked Kirishima. "According to my GPS, yes," replied Momo. Going through the arches that serve as an entrance to the shopping district, the redhead immediately dashed off, hoping to find their targets as fast as possible. But before he could get any sort of distance, Momo immediately stopped him, holding him by the collar. "We can't be too hasty, Kirishima. The villains know what we look like. Running like this would only attract their attention," said the intellect of the group. "They're right," Ida added. "We'll be sitting ducks if we expose ourselves like this. We need some sort of cover." Just then, with a hint of embarrassment, Momo pointed to a nearby donkey store. "I have a suggestion." 20 minutes later, the four came out of the store, all in different attires. Ida adopted a more bartender look, while Momo chose a date outfit, while Kirishima's outfit came with two horns. The student was still recognizable and was, despite the added appendages, the least disguised of the group. Todoroki, on the other hand, with a black hair wig that covered one of his eyes, was the most disguised. "Wouldn't have all of this been free had you used your creation quirk?" asked Todoroki. Well, it wouldn't have been legal, and, we could tip our fragile economy, and Miss Moneybags just wanted to experience a donkey store, I bet," Kirishima thought, while the girl nervously uttered out excuses. "Look, it's Yuuei," said a random bystander, causing the four to turn around, surprised by the sudden claim. However, the bystander wasn't talking about them, and was instead referring to the big screen, where they were airing the segment of Yuei's apology press conference, which took place earlier that night. The four stood silently, watching their homeroom teachers, except for Aizawa, who were all dressed in formal clothing. "We regret to announce that our lack of preparation was responsible for the harm that came to 27 of our first-year students. Although our institution is made for training heroes, our negligence in our defenses against villains were nonetheless apparent. And we understand that this made many of you uneasy and unsure about our liability," said Nezu in an apologetic tone. There is no excuse for what has happened, and we sincerely apologize. This is the third time your students were confronted by villains, all in 1 year, mind you," one of the reporters asked. "How will you explain such events to understandably concerned families, given that you've actually failed to protect 2 of them, and not to mention one of your own staff?" With the way Yuuei is being questioned, it seems almost as if, Todoroki thought, as he could feel drops of sweat running down his neck. "They're being treated like the bad guys. We've increased security around the school perimeters and revamped our school security system," Nezu answered. "And we've explained to the parents that our strong stance against villainy will ensure our students' safety." However, sarcastic laughter could be heard in the crowd prior to his statement. "Yeah, increase the security. Look at how well that went," some of the bystanders laughed. Looking around, the 4 students could feel a sudden air of opposition. The mood itself had changed. Yuuei had been put into the spotlight, as it had seemed the once loved and admired heroes were being criticized, chewed out, scolded. For once, people were starting to question their liability. Todoroki felt it. Momo felt it. Ida and Kirishima felt it. They all did, and it made them very uneasy. Mr. Nezu, another reporter, started asking, "You claim for your students' safety, but when the villains attacked, no orders were given out, no organized protocol was launched, and the teacher was nowhere to be found. How can you explain the lack of competence coming from your teacher, who is supposed to be a pro-hero? We were informed that the league focused on taking down the teachers rather than the students, And for the protocol, while it was launched, the villains had overrun the only safe point in the camp. Canceling the protocol and improvising was necessary in this situation to minimize casualties, as well as to avoid the worst case scenario, answered the rodent. 2 students were kidnapped, and the rest were heavily injured. If you claim that the worst case scenario was avoided, then what would have happened otherwise? Asked the reporter, with a look that was growing more and more skeptical. The worst case scenario in moments like these would have involved the death of many students. While physical injuries were had, any signs of mental trauma were non-existent. Is that meant to be a silver lining? The reporter asked, genuinely angry. We believe that as long as our students still have a future ahead of them, the worst case scenario can be considered avoided, answered Nezu. And can you say about Bakugo and Midoriya, who were both abducted? Asked the reporter. This was especially painful for both students and teachers because they all knew the truth. The fact that they had to keep up the lie was like having a knife jammed into your knee but being unable to pull it out. Having won the sports festival and holding an impressive school record, he had often shown violent tendencies and outbursts. This attitude of his has been quite consistent. Coupled with his skills, his brittle mind makes him a perfect target for the villains to kidnap. What if they are attempting to send him down a path of evil? Can you still prove that that boy still has a future? Asked the reporter. Suddenly, Nezu stood up, bowing down along with the rest of the teachers. Any lapse in his behavior is our failing. Still, you mistake his behavior at the sports festival. His aggressive nature is but a byproduct of his iron will and strong conviction, answered Nezu. He pursues the top rank of heroism more than anyone in our school. If the villains have indeed mistaken that for a weakness, then their thought process is indeed superficial. A silence followed. But that doesn't soundproof anything. Do you have a counter strategy to use against the villains? Asked the reporter. We have already gathered all the info we needed from a former member. We now know the location of the villains' hideout. Our pro-heroes are being dispatched as we speak. We will win this war. You have my word, Nezu said in a serious tone. Ah yes, the captured villain. We've gotten word that he had already escaped. How do you explain that? Asked the reporter. The reveal of this news shocked the teachers and Nezu alike. Although taken aback by the news, they were able to hide their shock. No comment, replied the principal. At a rundown bar that was the League of Villains hideout, several SWAT vans pulled in. Out of it came the pro-heroes and the heavy-duty police forces. As the number 1, 2, and 5 hero, as well as Kamui Wood, Vaseline, Bookworm, and Banana Mysterio got out of the armored vans. They looked up, staring at the hideouts. Around 50 policemen, carrying batons and riot shields, stood in the back lines, protecting the cameramen for the news agencies as All Might walked to the League's front door. Meanwhile, at a nearby warehouse, a second row of armored vehicles pulled over, with Mount Lady, Tiger, Midnight, Gang Orcas, and Best Genus walking up to the front door. It's time to turn the tables, villains, All Might said with his signature smile. As the raid was happening live, Katsuki was sitting there, tied to his chair, watching the event unfold. You can do it, All Might. You can break out of any tough situation, he cheered, rattling his chains. Meanwhile, All For One sat on his chair, watching the student from his monitor until he felt a presence. Looks like your plan was not perfect, Izuku, just as I suspected. You have much to learn, All For One smiled. But lucky for you, your sensei is here to take one for the team. At around this time, the silence of the former hideout that belonged to the League suddenly received a light knock on their metallic door. Hello, Kamino Pizza Delivery. What followed shortly after was not the promise of a tasty Italian dish, but rather the wall caving in from a smash coming from the number 1 pro hero. Looking up to see the damage caused, All Might saw most of the members mentioned by Tomura all knocked back in bewilderment. What the hell? Yelled Spinner, who was sent flying from the punch. In the middle of all of this, they found Izuku, dressed in formal attire with a white dress shirt, black tie, and dark dress pants, and holding a butterfly knife up to restrain Katsuki's neck. Seeing that the heroes had arrived, he dropped his weapon, looking very confused. All Might, how did you find us? Asked the confused villain. It's over, Izuku. Or should I say Mightless. There is no escape for you, because we are here. All Might cheered triumphantly. Looking around, all of his subordinates were tied up in Kamui Wood's wooden ropes, unable to move. Dabi tried to burn off his ropes, but was taken out in a flash by Gran Torino. It's All Might. Who knew that the heroes would attack this soon? Asked Mr. Compress. From the back door, Edshot came out, securing any possible emergency exits. accompanied by a few policemen. Endeavor, on the other hand, stood outside along with Vaseline and Banana Mysterio serving as bodyguards. It must have been scary holding out for so long. "Don't worry, young Bakugo, you're safe now," All Might said in a reassuring tone, before turning to Izuku, who had panic drawn all over his face. "Now, young Midoriya, come with us, you have some explaining to do." How did you find us?" asked Izuku. "We had a former associate of yours leak your hideout's information. We know all about your league, including who you really are," Gran Torino answered, turning to the restrained villains. "Hiki Kenji, Sako Atsuhiro, Iguchi Shuichi, Toga Himiko, Irina von Tescalorius, Sukuyama Sachiko, Kim Yong, and suddenly they realized Jin Bubaigawara, otherwise known as Choice, was nowhere to be found. "Where's Jin?" asked Gran Torino. Suddenly, a smile drew on Izuku's face, a malicious one that sent shivers down All Might's spine. "I'm sorry, but sadly, no matter how much I tried, I couldn't get Choice to clone himself," he answered with a Cheshire cat-like grin. Suddenly, all of the restrained villains, including Katsuki, dissolved into grey puddles. The hero's eyes widened in horror as suddenly the room once full of people was gone, replaced with a room covered in grey sludge, with Izuku being the only one standing. "Sorry, heroes," Izuku smiled, "but your Bakugo is in another hideout." Meanwhile, in the actual hideout, a Mario reference, nice, the real spinner cheered, watching the recording with the rest of the league. Back in the original base, All Might stood there, bewildered that they got played. "Snap out of it, All Might. We can still capture Izuku," Kamui Wood said, as his branches extended towards him. Suddenly, with a murderous glare from Izuku, the branches stopped moving. What's wrong?" "Having trouble using your quirk?" Izuku asked, his eyes now bright red. Seeing this, Gran Torino tried to knock him out, but Izuku threw his butterfly knife at him. While the old man dodged, the knife suddenly boomeranged back, stabbing him in the back as the man fell out of the air, coughing blood. "Gran Torino!" All Might cried out, before turning to Izuku. How are you doing this?" "Simple. Erasure plus homing. It doesn't get any simpler than that," Izuku replied. "But those are Aizawa and Snipe's quirks, yes. I simply stole it from them. After all I need to do is touch them," Izuku laughed sadistically. "No, it can't be," All Might uttered out, dropping to his knees. "Yes, indeed. The one called All For One that you once knew, having lost his name. If you came to defeat All For One, he's standing right in front of you," Izuku laughed, pointing at himself. "So come on, hit me." In a roar of anger, All Might came charging in. "All For One!" Right as his fist was about to connect. However, a dark portal appeared in front of Izuku, warping away his fist as several portals also started to appear in various locations, including outside. Suddenly, a white one came walking in, letting out a roar as a blue beam shot out of its back, piercing the roof and going 100 feet upwards before slowly creating a portal. "I hope you have fun inside this mousetrap I made for you all, heroes," Izuku laughed, as he walked through a portal while several Nomus attacked the heroes. "Have a blast." Suddenly, the heroes heard a ticking noise. They understood what that meant, and in a split second, grabbing everyone in the room and throwing them out, right as the building ignited into a ball of flame, was All Might. Looking at the building burning, and the numerous injured policemen caught in the blast, All Might stood in bewilderment. So much was just revealed in such a short time. Izuku having All For One, the trap, the amount of people that were injured. "No!" the hero cried in frustration, slamming his fist on the ground. "Endeavor, we need backup," Kamui yelled. Looking back, wave after wave of Nomus were flooding in, attacking police and heroes alike. Looking up, the blue dome was almost touching the ground, trapping all the heroes and even the newscasters inside. "Tsukauchi, hurry up and evacuate the news agencies. We need to get as many people out of this dome as possible," Endeavor yelled. However, the Nomus just kept coming. "We sent a huge groups of heroes to take care of the Nomu warehouse. Why are they still coming?" yelled Tsukauchi, trying to fend off the attack. 2 minutes earlier, Best Genus Group kicked off their side of the raid with equal force, with Mount Lady splitting the warehouse in half with one axe kick. What followed was a barrage of threads restraining the confused Nomus. While the Chainsaw Nomu, the same one that took out Aizawa, was there. They stood little chance against the sheer number of pro heroes. Tiger ran in, scouting the tanks, before finding 2 unconscious bodies, the ones of Izuku and Snipe, floating in 2 of them. Immediately breaking them out, he handed them to Mountain Lady. Izuku and Snipe are secured, Tiger called out. While the pro heroes secured the vicinity, the 4 students caught off guard by the sudden impact saw a dark, sinister figure emerge from the shadows. The pro heroes seemed to notice it too. Its presence alone filled the air with death and despair. It seems that Izuku's plan was not perfect. The whereabouts of this warehouse were never meant to be revealed, said the figure. But I suspected such would happen, which is why I am here. Stop, don't take another step, Gang Orca yelled out. The figure didn't listen, however, as he inched closer and closer out of the shadows. Suddenly, the number 4 hero activated his quirk, as the threads on the man's suit tightened, tying him up from head to toe. Genist, what if he's just a civilian? Asked Mount Lady. Use your head. A moment of hesitation would allow the villains to turn the tables on us, replied the heroes. We must not allow the villains to pull off any sort of tricks. Everything after that point was blackness. There was a split second when the figure broke out of its binds. Another for when he raised his right arm. Just then, the 4 students felt instinct within their bodies take over as they all ducked down for cover. The nauseous air, the aura of murder. It had created the illusion of the 4 of them dead. A massive blast followed, leaving behind a flattened out field of what used to be a city. Suddenly, Todoroki remembered about a certain villain All Might told them about. Someday, you might have to face the ultimate evil. Perhaps. So, that has to be him, Todoroki thought, reminiscing those words. All for one. Looking down at the downed heroes, the villain laughed, seeing that they had all survived but were all unconscious, besides Best Genist, who was still awake despite taking the brute force of the attack. I'm impressed, number 4 hero Best Genist. I was planning to blast them straight to hell, but you pulled them away by their clothes using your quirk. Such decisive movements. You truly are amazing. All for one clapped, before putting a hole in the hero's stomach. Sadly, your skill is not needed. After all, it wouldn't benefit Izuku's brilliant mind. The students, on the other hand, were shaking in fear, their minds racing, yelling at them to get out of there. They tried to make even the slightest of movements, yet felt completely paralyzed. Suddenly, a familiar voice was heard as a portal opened. Oh god, I heard I let the location of this warehouse slip, but I didn't think it would be this bad, said a familiar voice in a concerned tone. It's okay. This is proof that you have room to improve, and you are still far from stagnation, All for One replied, rubbing his head. The fact that you have planned such an ambush is enough to earn my approval. You really are a gift that keeps on giving, young Midoriya. It's him. It's Izuku, Todoroki thought. I could have been there for you all this time, Izuku. Now you're right here. I can't lose you again. None of us can. Move, damn it, move! Suddenly, before Todoroki could make his move, Ida held him back, his eyes telling him to stay put. Although one seems to have escaped your mousetrap. The strongest one, in fact. I suggest you take your hostage and run, All for One added. Suddenly, Izuku went into what was left of the building, dragging out a limp, weakened, blonde teen. Katsuki, Hiroshima thought. What have they done to you? Let me the fuck go, Katsuki roared, rushing at Izuku with the remnants of his strength. Feisty as always, huh, Kachan? Izuku taunted before thinking of a better idea. I'll tell you what. Soon our favorite hero will come. Want to see? You bastard! You murdered them! Katsuki kept on yelling. So many of them are dead. What happened to the Deku who fanboyed every hero he met? Answer me! Murdered them? What does he mean? Whispered Momo. Suddenly, a small figure came flying in the distance. He's here, said All for One. As the man came in, All for One extended his arms, parrying his hit. However, looking at his face, he saw that he was no longer smiling, that he looked anguished. Realizing what must have happened, All for One let out a chuckle. I'm amazed you're still mentally stable enough after all of that. Tell me, how many people died in that mousetrap? How many did you fail to save? Hearing this, All Might cringed, as one who had salt rubbed into an open wound would, reminiscing about what just happened. A few minutes ago, Several Nomus latched onto All Might, who sent them all flying with a twirl. Meanwhile, he turned to the policemen, who were getting swarmed by the artificial humans. Suddenly, as one of the police riddled one of the Nomus with bullets, a glow appeared in the monster's chest, as the Nomu exploded in a ball of flame similar to a grenade blast. When the smoke cleared, they saw the policemen, along with some of the nearby policemen who were also unfortunately at the wrong place at the wrong time, blown apart. Blood splattered all across the pavement. Seeing this led to All Might freezing up, as one of the Nomus took advantage of the situation to lunge at the hero. Vaseline, seeing this, ran up to stop it. "All Might, watch out!" the hero yelled, tackling the monster. Suddenly, the Nomu switched his attention to the hero, grabbing onto him tightly and detonating. A crater appeared where the hero once was, with all that was left of him being pieces of his costume. It's all my fault. I couldn't save them. I couldn't save any of them. All Might watched in disbelief as Kamui was getting pinned down by several Nomus as he was trying in vain to rescue Bookworm, who was already dead, torn in half by the kamikaze Nomus. The surviving heroes were still doing their best, besides Banana Mysterio, who was hiding behind an upside-down van. I can't die. I still haven't finished my book called Mightful. I have to survive. My 1,064 followers depend on it, he muttered. As he felt despair crawled down his skin, All Might's body twitched as he was biting his lips, praying for all of this just to be a dream. All of a sudden, a voice came at him from behind, as several Nomus fell, scorched by a blast of flames. "All Might!" Endeavor yelled, running to him, slapping him across the face. "Snap out of it!" Suddenly, All Might came back to his senses. "Inji, listen up. I shouldn't be the one telling you this, but you need to fucking grow up here. None of us are, and we all slip up sometimes, so don't put the death of these men on your shoulders," Endeavor yelled out. Him too, upset at the number of dead heroes and police. "I know it's a lot to bear, but you can't let all of this get to you. We need you, All Might. The world needs you." Hearing this, All Might had to take a moment to wipe the tears running down his cheek from his speech. "Right, I can't let these unanswered cries for help go unattended," All Might replied. Hearing this, the number 2 hero smiled, before lifting him up and using his fire to rocket the two towards the force field that was keeping them imprisoned. "Then get out of there and finish this," he yelled, as he used his full power, blasting a hole through the force field and throwing him out, before the gap closed. "Inji, wait," All Might called back, saying that Endeavor did not follow him. "You need to get to the second hideout and make sure everyone is okay over there. Finish this war for us, All Might. We're counting on you," Endeavor said, with a reassuring smile that made All Might wonder if he was still talking to the same Endeavor. "Now go, we'll hold them off, just go." As All Might jumped away, the remaining pro heroes and policemen, totaling at around 23 people in total, as opposed to their initial 60, huddled up, trying to fight off waves and Nomus who, although the portals stopped appearing, were still very numerous, as the bulk of them gathered in the wreckage of what was left of the car, protecting the force field generator Nomu. Back with All Might, he pushed back the boss as the two disconnected, pushing themselves back. "Not bad, All Might. Seems you haven't lost your touch," All For One commented. "Same goes for you, All For One," All Might chuckled, noticing that Izuku and Katsuki were behind the villain boss. "Now, how about you tell me what you did to brainwash young Midoriya?" Hearing this made All For One laugh. "Brainwash? That's your conclusion? My dear All Might, you were mistaken. You see, Izuku willingly joined the League of Villains," All For One replied. "Willingly? Don't play dumb with me," All Might replied, angered, charging in to throw a punch. He was one of Yuuei's top students. The two clashed once more, as the 4 students watched the fight unfold, with Todoroki paying his focus towards Izuku, who was calmly holding back Katsuki, who was helplessly watching the fight unfold before him. The villain boss swung his fist at All Might, but the attack grazed him, as he hit All For One in the chest. That punch seemed to do nothing, however, as he suddenly felt the force of that punch run down his arm. Impact reversal, huh? In that case, All Might thought, grabbing All For One's arm and throwing him over the shoulder. I'll just beat him with something other than punching. Suddenly, the villain's arm expanded, launching a blast of air, sending the hero flying through several buildings. No way. All Might's losing? No, he has to win. He always does, thought Katsuki, as Izuku suddenly dropped him like a sack of potatoes, realizing that All Might was coming back. Of course, he did, nailing All For One across the face before he could activate the impact reversal quirk, breaking his mask and sending him flying back. It seemed as though he had timing on his side too, as right as soon as he knocked down the villain, the helicopters came flying by, recording the whole thing. Tell me, All For One, after all that you've done to young Midoriya, how can you still look at yourself and have no remorse? All Might yelled in anger, grabbing him by the collar. You manipulated him, toyed with him, made him your puppet. What more would you have done to him had I not stepped in? Suddenly, a short, smaller figure came in, and with ferocity grabbed him by his forearm. All Might felt the stinging pain as his skin started to deteriorate. Pulling his arm back, he met face to face with his assailant. Izuku Midoriya. What is this? The supposedly kidnapped student, Izuku Midoriya, has just attacked All Might, newscasters announced, as people across Japan stood shocked. Young Midoriya, please, listen to me. This isn't you. Please, come back to us. Can it, All Might? Izuku yelled back before turning to the wall the 4 students were hiding behind. And you guys come out too. I know you were hiding there. If you're here for Kachan, take him. He served his use. Hearing this surprised the 4. Coming out of cover, Kirishima, Momo, and Ida ran towards Katsuki, while Todoroki stood there, facing his former classmate and friend. Izuku, however, turned to the helicopters, waving at them, waving at all of Japan. Well then, it seems it's time you two set things straight. Tell him, young Midoriya. Tell the world your true story, All For One said, getting to his feet. What do you mean? All Might asked. Tell me, All Might. Where was the first time we ever met? Asked Izuku. Well, in the classroom of Yuuei, of course, All Might replied. Hearing this, Izuku laughed. He laughed hysterically too, so much so that All Might was trembling, disturbed by his behavior. You've forgotten, haven't you? Asked Izuku, searching through his pocket, digging out a crumbled up piece of golden paper, throwing it towards All Might. The paper landed perfectly in his hand, thanks to Snipe's homing quirk. Looking at the paper, All Might's eyes suddenly widened. I know what will cheer you up. Here, a special VIP plus ticket to the All Might fan club. That memory was all he needed to trigger what the #1 hero had forgotten after all this time. The paper in his hands. It was in fact the same ticket. You were that quirkless kid that asked me if he could be a hero a year ago, All Might asked, his voice trembling in fear. I was so happy that I had met the symbol of peace, the man I admired for my entire life, the man I knew I could trust. I worshipped you, All Might. I thought of you as a god. Then when I asked, can I be a hero? What did you say? No, you cannot. Some symbol of hope you turned out to be. What were those words you once said were, become who you decide to become? Yeah, look at how great that turned out, Izuku yelled, letting out all of his repressed emotions. You spat my trust in my face. You left me in the dust, and still you carry that smile, as though you've won every battle. How does Sensei look at himself with no remorse? How can you look at yourself with no remorse, knowing that you broke the dreams of one of your most dedicated fans? Hearing this, Todoroki froze, as All Might dropped to his knees in disbelief. Is what he's saying true, All Might? Todoroki yelled in anger. What have I done? All Might uttered out. I've been waiting so very long to do this. I've been waiting for so long to finally put you down, to expose you to the entire world. Now come, hit me, fight me. I'm still a villain, am I not? Do your damn job, Izuku yelled. Suddenly, All For One charged up another super punch, aiming at All Might. Seeing this, All Might snapped out of his trance, about to dodge, until he saw that there was a girl trapped behind him in the wreckage. He had no choice. Another blast shot at him, as he used his full power to counter it. As the smoke cleared, everyone was shocked to see All Might in his deflated form. What the did All Might look like that the entire time? Asked Momo, as the 3 were able to escape with Katsuki, and was now watching the rest unfold on screen. And now, Your truth has been exposed, All Might, All For One finished, as the two villains looked down at the pro hero, who was at death's door. Not only has your reputation been destroyed, but now, so has your appearance. Yes, ladies and gentlemen who are watching, this is All Might's true form. This is the hero you've been relying on, and any of you still trust him, he who has shown you his true self. Quite a show you put up there, Sensei, Izuku smiled. All Might, on the other hand, had completely given up, not because of the pain of his injuries. Rather, the news of what truly happened to Izuku was revealed to him. What he was seeing in front of him was his own fault, and it had completely shattered him. I'm no hero. You can win, All Might. The girl he saved cheered. You can still beat him. Suddenly, following the girl, people from all across Japan started to cheer him on, telling him that he could still win. Suddenly, Todoroki came flying out of nowhere, punching Izuku across the face. All Might, Todoroki called out, as the hero listened carefully. If there was anything you taught me that I will remember forever, it was to never give up. So what you made a mistake here and there? The world still needs a symbol of peace. You are the symbol, so please, get up and win. The world cheered on in unison. Hearing this, things his former sensei Nada once said came flashing back by his eyes. A fire who was weak, on the brink of extinguishing, suddenly started to burn like a sun. When you're at your limit, just remember what you fight for, why you swing those fists, and for who you swing them for. You need to remember what you want to be to push yourself past your limits. With that, All Might reverted fully to his muscular form. I know it must have been hard, young Midoriya, hence why I will save you and redeem myself from my past mistakes, All Might said, getting back on his feet. For I am the symbol of peace and justice. All For One looked at his student, who looked back. It seems as though our hero hasn't been fully broken, said All For One. You still lack any real offense quirks, so sit this one out. Don't worry, I got that covered, Izuku said as two Nomus suddenly emerged from the ground next to Izuku. Nomus? Where do those things come from? Asked Todoroki. Suddenly, All For One realized what Izuku was doing, and quickly turned to him. Izuku, don't do it. It has disastrous consequences, All For One yelled in a panicked tone, leaving the two heroes confused and terrified. Mostly the latter, judging by how scared All For One looked. Suddenly, the Nomu started to squirm in pain, as dark energy wrapped around them as they were seemingly shrinking. Flashback. Artificial humans? Asked Hisashi. Yeah, it's a scientific breakthrough on my part. These beasts are but a byproduct of your ingenuity, replied All For One. Yeah, amazing indeed. So, did you take any notes on these creatures? Asked the scientist. Well, from what I gather, the reason behind the non-human appearances of these are due to a mutation that occurs when two quirks meet without a regulator quirk like All For One. My quirk, in fact, allows me to have multiple quirks solely because it keeps the quirks in my body separate long enough for my body to adapt to both of them. Without it, the quirks will fuse and deform the user, creating these atrocities, replied All For One. So, what you're saying is that all you need to do to create these creatures is to put an extra quirk in someone? Hisashi replied. It's not that simple. My All For One can easily infuse a second quirk into someone else and have them just be fine. However, should a quirk enter someone's body artificially, which is what I've done using your chemicals, it creates a mutant quirk that would instantly deform your patient into these monsters. So technically speaking, these things only have one quirk, and that is to have multiple. It's like an apple, pear, and mango all fused together. Biting different segments will have different flavors, but it's still one fruit, replied All For One. And I assume if you try taking the Nomu's quirk, it would mutate you and turn you into a Nomu then, Hisashi speculated. In theory, yes, All For One replied. Back to the present. I should have warned him about this, All For One thought. As the Nomu's body shrunk, its flesh seemed to be melting together with that of Izuku's. Todoroki, All Might, and All For One only watched in horror as the two Nomus melted and fused with the boy. All Might, Izuku yelled, his voice becoming deeper and savage. You said that you are a symbol of peace, huh? His eyes became pitch black and his pupils became red. His hands mutated into massive claws, and some of the black flesh went over his mouth as it formed into a massive jaw, similar to his mask. the only difference being the long, razor-sharp fangs. While he still kept his size and human aspects, he looked far from human. "Then I'll become the symbol of despair," Izuku roared, as even All For One was confused as though how he didn't lose his sanity as he expected he would have. "And the name I will give myself for my rebirth is Mightless." "愛してる."